My name is Riley. I'm 35 years old, living in a small town in Oregon. I used to think that if I stayed quiet long enough, everything would eventually settle down. But that Saturday afternoon, I learned that some things, if you stay silent about them for too long, will choke the very breath out of you. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. Just a curt sentence from the kitchen. Acting up again, huh? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. I just said you shouldn't take my savings to pay for that fish tank. Your money, he laughed, stepping closer. You live in my house, eat the food I buy, and you dare to talk like that. The slap came as fast as a flipped switch. I didn't have time to dodge. My head hit the edge of the counter. One side of my face burned and my left eye blurred instantly. I staggered, gripping the table for balance, saying nothing. Simply because I had nothing left to say. About an hour later, I was still sitting frozen on the sofa, pressing an ice pack to my cheek. The TV was playing reruns of some old sitcom, the canned laughter droning on ridiculous. I heard a car stop in the driveway, then the familiar sound of the front door opening without a knock. My parents, like every weekend, walked in carrying grocery bags, the scent of that old fabric softener lingering faintly in the air. I didn't stand, just turned my face slightly to greet them. And in that exact moment, my mother froze mid-step. Riley, she said my name, then fell silent. My father was different. He didn't look shocked, he was calculating. His eyes scanned from the ice pack in my hand to the bruise spreading under my left eye, then looked away as if weighing whether to bring it up or put it aside. Behind me, he stepped out from the hallway, white t-shirt, half-empty beer in hand, face without a trace of pretense. Well, look at that, the whole family's here, he said. Polite bunch, my wife's family. My mother bent down to open the grocery bag, her hands trembling slightly. My father shrugged and walked into the kitchen. They both arranged the food like they were staging a supermarket catalog photo, neat, pretty, and without another word. I didn't turn my head, just sat there, eyes fixed on the TV, not even registering what was on. When they left, the door closed softly, almost weightless. No goodbye, no question. No one said, "Are you okay?" Just the canned laughter still playing on the TV and the cold from the ice pack seeping into my cheekbone. He dropped into the leather chair beside me, throwing his legs up on the coffee table, lounging as if he'd just won an easy chess match. "See," he sneered. "Who's gonna believe you?" I didn't answer. My throat tightened, not from tears. I didn't cry. I just felt a cold emptiness spreading behind my ribs, where my heart used to be. He took another swig of beer, leaned his head back, eyes closed like a man secure in the belief that everything was still in his control. I touched my cheek again, not to ease the pain, but to feel it, to remember that he had done this, that my parents had seen, and that no one said a word. I began recording everything, not out of fear, but with a cold kind of clarity. No dramatic soundtrack, no cinematic moment of awakening, just one night 3 weeks after my parents came to visit and looked straight through the bruise on my face as if it didn't exist. I woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of banging in the garage. He'd come home late, drunk, kicking over my toolbox because the garage door remote had jammed. I didn't go down. I just stood on the stairs in the dark, and for the first time thought, if he slips, who will believe me the next morning? I bought a cheap phone at a gas station nearly 6 miles from home, paid in cash. I set the password as the birthday of someone. No one in the family knew my best friend from college, Madison. We hadn't spoken in almost a decade until I happened to see her name in an article about independent legal centers for women facing abuse. I sent a short text, "Madison, if you're still, you reply, Camellia." An hour later, her message came, "Camellia blooms in silence." I cried softly, quietly. Then I got to work. I photographed every bruise on my body using my alarm clock to mark the exact time. I didn't save them to my personal phone. Instead, I created an anonymous email account called W. Everett 1988, borrowing my grandmother's last name, the one who taught me that a girl can be strong without anyone's permission. I recorded conversations when he was drunk, him talking about moving a little money around, or calling me the worst investment of his life. I didn't react, just smiled faintly and set my phone in a coffee mug on the table. the mic close enough to catch every word. Quietly checking our joint bank account, I discovered nearly $12,700 missing over 4 months. The recipient's name was a company I'd never heard of, John P. Haverly LLC. When I asked, he smirked. I invested in a project. You wouldn't understand finance. I didn't push. I just logged it date, time, words, documents. All uploaded to that anonymous email, protected by a password only Madison and I knew. One evening, Madison drove down from Portland over 2 hours just to hand me a USB drive and a printed lease for an apartment in Rainier Valley, signed in her name, but reserved for me. In the car, she said, "Only you don't have to run. But you need a place to stand when you're ready to walk out." I nodded, eyes fixed on the gray tote bag, holding the financial records she'd carefully wrapped in foil to block scanning. We met 3 more times over the next 7 weeks, usually in the parking lot behind a 24-hour laundromat. No cameras, no staff, and the heavy smell of machine oil masking our voices. In one of those meetings, Madison handed me something that sent a chill down my spine, a copy of a temporary complaint. "All you have to do is sign, and I'll file it tomorrow morning." I took it without trembling. I'd stopped shaking by then. He didn't suspect a thing. Still wore polished leather shoes, still sat drinking beer on that sagging sofa, still called me a coward. But I wasn't anymore. I'd seen his face once asleep in that chair as I stood silently over him. The face didn't look like a strong man. It looked like someone about to lose something he didn't even know had already slipped from his grasp. I said nothing. Just walked quietly back to the bedroom, shut the door, and wrote another journal entry, day 49. He doesn't know I've moved all of my private retirement funds into a holding account. Not much, but enough to start over. I won't run. I'll walk straight out. Thursday night, he came home later than usual, his breath thick with cheap whiskey and his tone louder than normal. I was sitting by the window, a thin blanket wrapped around my shoulders, holding a cup of peppermint tea that had gone cold. He tossed his keys onto the table and slurred, "I bought a few rounds for my friends. What are you going to interrogate me?" Now I just shook my head. Not a word. That was what he hated most. I had been waiting for this exact moment when he was off guard, tired, careless. I got up and walked into the kitchen, where the note I'd written in advance sat neatly inside a black envelope. No name, no address. Only one line, "Not poison." But it might kill a few illusions. I placed it next to the half-finished beer can on the coffee table, then retreated toward the bedroom as if nothing had happened. But my heartbeat was in my ears, not from fear, but from anticipation. About 30 minutes later, when he had passed out on the couch with his legs sprawled out, I quietly unlocked the front door. Madison was standing under the awning, a dark gray duffel slung over her shoulder, a folder tucked under her arm, and the burner phone I'd been saving in her coat pocket. "It's all ready," she whispered. I nodded. We didn't talk, just moved quickly and silently like a pair of scouts. The house was so quiet you could hear the wind sliding through the trees in the backyard. I led Madison into the bedroom, where the only light came from the small lamp casting a soft glow on the ash-gray wall. On the desk sat a small handbag I'd prepared earlier, wallet, documents, a USB containing copies of all the evidence, and a hardcover notebook filled with every important date and the exact words he had said that I could never forget. "Does he have a weapon?" Madison asked. "No, but he has something more dangerous, the belief that I'll always stay." We began setting up recording devices, a pinhole camera disguised inside a tissue box on the TV stand. The burner phone was activated and set to automatically record any time noise went above 50 decibels. I stepped into the living room, one last time looking at him, lying there, motionless, mouth slightly open, beer can tipped over, leaving a small stain on the carpet. In his hand, the envelope was still unopened. I leaned down and whispered in his ear, "It'll be cold tomorrow. You should wear a jacket." No reaction. I turned away. No trembling, no looking back. We left at 2:17 a.m. Madison's car was parked beside an abandoned church, headlights off, engine running. She drove along Orchard Creek Road, looping past the farmer's market, the one stretch of town where the security cameras stopped working after 11 p.m. In the car, I held the folder against my chest like a shield. Madison didn't ask anything else, just turned the radio on low, letting the piano fill the silence. "You're sure you don't want to call the police first? Not yet. When he realizes he's lost control, he'll show more. And I need that." The next morning at 9:06 a.m., the burner phone buzzed. An alert from the motion sensor camera I'd planted in the house. MOTIONDETECTEDLIVINGROM 859A IUDIODETECTD 901A. What the hell? I opened the recording immediately. His voice came through irritated, confused. "You think this childish crap will scare me, the sound of tearing paper?" Silence. "Then damn it, you knew." Madison looked at me but said nothing. I exhaled slowly, eyes locked on the screen. "I'm not afraid of him getting angry," I said evenly. "What I fear most is living the same way I did before." Madison nodded. "Then you're headed the right way." At 11:42 a.m. He called, not on my main phone, which I'd already blocked, but on the burner. I didn't answer. I just texted back, "You're going to need a lawyer." "Not me." I set the phone down, turned to Madison. "Where we go now?" She smiled faintly. "To a place he can't control anymore." I was making coffee in Madison's temporary apartment when the phone on the table started buzzing nonstop. Not the burner. My main phone. His name lit up clearly, Travis H. No emoji, no nickname. I let it ring out. The third time today. His text came right after, just 4 words, "You're challenging me." I didn't reply. We'd been gone from the house for 3 days. The documents had been submitted, the cameras had already captured several clear clips of him raging, smashing things, and muttering words no one should ever say. But I knew Travis, he wouldn't accept losing control. And I also knew he would come. That afternoon, Madison and I went back to the old house, not to get more stuff, but to face him. The plan was laid out in detail: a phone recording video on the kitchen counter, a second phone ready for audio, the doorbell camera set to capture everything, if something happened. We weren't alone outside Ben's car. A friend of Madison's was parked 3 houses down, keeping contact via 2-way radio. I didn't shake. Not anymore. As we stepped inside, the wind blew so hard the back door slammed into the wall. Cold air seeped through a window that hadn't been shut properly. I walked to the table where I'd left a copy of the files the day before. That's when an engine roared in the driveway. Travis walked in like the house was still his. He didn't knock, didn't wait, just shoved the door open, his eyes scanning me, then Madison, then locking on the phone recording on the counter. "Oh, so the game's really on," he said, voice dripping with mockery. I didn't move, didn't step back. "It's not a game. This is the first time you've seen me not avoid you." He moved closer, faster than I expected. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. I didn't scream. I just looked him straight in the eye. "Let go," I said, my voice low and firm. "You think those videos will do anything?" he growled. "I'll say you made it up. You set me up. You dragged your crazy friend into this to play along. You really haven't changed," I said with a faint smile. "Still think the world revolves around the stage you built." At that moment, Madison stepped forward, holding her phone high, recording live. Her voice was steady, clear. "You're being broadcast. Live stream. I suggest you say something you can repeat in court." Travis froze. He clearly hadn't expected that. His grip loosened, but his eyes flickered anger, suspicion, fear. "You're defaming me." Madison didn't react. She just brought the phone closer to his face, the camera catching the erratic stare of a man losing control. I stepped back, gently freeing my wrist from his trembling hand. "You once said I was just a shadow in this house. You said no one will believe you. Now I'm showing the world, not so they'll believe me, but so they'll know who you are. No shouting. No shoving. Just silence sharp as a blade between 3 people and a camera recording every movement." Travis stepped back. His face changed when a ding sounded from Madison's phone. Comments were coming in. Viewers were climbing. "Turn it off." "Who do you think you are? I'm the last person you can threaten," I said. He made to step forward again. But outside a car engine started, and a figure appeared at the window. Ben, phone in hand, had filmed the whole thing from the car. Travis froze completely. His eyes darted around looking for an exit. I'll sue. You'll regret this. Good luck with court, Madison said. We filed the paperwork this morning. And this, she held up a small USB, is what the police will get next. Travis stood like he'd been turned to stone. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from the county court's automated line: temporary protection order approved. Effective immediately. I held up the screen. You have 5 minutes to leave. Then the police will be here. No one said another word. Travis turned, walking quickly toward the door as if pulled by some invisible force. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, just heavy breathing and the defeated slump of his shoulders. The door closed behind him, leaving a silence so dense it felt like it pressed on the walls. I stood there looking straight into the camera and said, "We don't stay silent anymore." Madison and I arrived at the Glenridge City Police Station at 6:45 a.m., less than 12 hours after the confrontation. A light drizzle fell, and fog still clung to the car's windshield. Inside my brown leather document bag was something Travis no longer had control over: evidence. The desk officer Halvorsen, a man in his 40s, with a patient yet cautious demeanor, glanced over the stack of files. He asked just one question. "Have you reported this before?" I shook my head. "At the time, I didn't have evidence. Now I do." We were led into a small room with a recording camera, 2 chairs, and an old coffee maker against the wall. I set my bag on the table and began to present my case, not with emotion but in order. I showed photos of injuries from 3 months ago, each with a timestamp. Then came audio recordings in which Travis admitted he had been rough because I didn't know my place. A printed bank statement revealed $12,700 transferred from our joint account to a private company unrelated to me. And then an ER report from February, where I was diagnosed with head trauma, cause unknown. "And this," I said, placing down another document stamped in red, "is a letter from my therapist. She advised me to plan an exit due to escalating violence risks." Officer Halvorsen carefully gathered everything, then called in a female detective. Simmons sharp-featured, her eyes showing no pity, only focus. "Did you copy the data onto a USB?" she asked. I nodded, handing her the thick plastic case Madison had prepared. "This has everything, including the video from yesterday's confrontation. The original live stream was deleted, but we have the internal recording." She took it without another question. The situation was already clear. After leaving the interview room, we were told to wait. Not long after, Halvorsen returned with a more serious expression. "We've secured an emergency detainment order. He'll be served this morning." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel afraid either. It was more like something was being unfastened from my chest, like removing each invisible chain I'd carried for the past 5 years. Near 11 a.m., I received a text from an unknown number: SUSPECTRAVISHAYESEDTAINE D10:56 a.m. A TRESIDENCE. I read it over and over, not out of surprise, but to confirm that I had done something I wouldn't have dared to imagine 3 months ago. Madison sat beside me, her eyes fixed on the low-volume news broadcast in the waiting area. A 38-year-old man was arrested this morning on suspicion of domestic abuse and marital financial exploitation. Glenridge County Police are investigating further with assistance from the district attorney's office. His name hadn't been released yet, but I knew it would be soon. At 3 p.m., I got a call from Lieutenant Simmons. Her voice was firm, but not without respect. "We're temporarily processing your property check and no contact order request. One thing to note, his lawyer is already here." I closed my eyes for a few seconds. "That's fine. I have mine. When I hung up, Madison looked at me with a question she didn't need to ask. "What now?" I smiled. Not wide, but real. Now I go home, not to the old one. To a place where I'll never be afraid to knock on the door again. That night, I opened my laptop, reloaded all the evidence onto an external hard drive, and drafted an email to an address I'd kept for months, alana.rivera@northjournal.com, an investigative reporter who had exposed an abuse scandal in Minnesota politics. The subject line was a single sentence: "I've been silent for too long." I attached everything. That night, I sat in my temporary rental apartment, the warm yellow kitchen light spilling onto the faded window curtains, steam curling from my mug of tea. Madison had gone home. The room returned to the state I once feared most: quiet. The phone rang. The caller ID read Mom. Not Mother, not Helen, just Mom. The way I'd saved it since I was 15, after she took me for a vaccination and forgot the car keys, leaving us stranded in the parking lot for over an hour. She'd laughed like it was a memory. I'd thought she was the strongest person in the world. I wasn't sure why she was calling tonight. Maybe she'd heard from someone, or worse, from Travis himself. I picked up. Riley. Her voice wasn't loud or rushed. Just tired. "I heard your situation is all over the place." I rested my hand on the table, kept my tone even. "The situation is exactly what I've hidden from you for too long." "You know Travis got arrested, right?" I nodded, though she couldn't see. "I'm the one who filed." Silence. Then a sigh. "Riley, you know marriage isn't always perfect. I fought with your father too. But going to the police, hiring lawyers, airing everything out, that's not how a grown wife handles family matters." The words landed cold, not painful, but chilling all the way down my spine. "You mean staying silent like the time you saw the bruise on my face and didn't ask a single question?" She hesitated. "I didn't want to interfere in private matters." "Private matters," I gave a short laugh. "Private matters are who makes dinner, who takes out the trash. When a man hits his wife, drains the money she earns for someone else, and controls every call she takes, that's no longer private." Her tone sharpened. "Riley, you're making a big deal out of this. I know you tend to be overly sensitive, but smearing our family in public will make people think you're unstable." I stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the quiet street under the lamplight. "No, Mom. They'll see a woman who stayed silent too long and finally chose to speak. You need to be stronger. You're my daughter. I taught you to endure, to get through, not to give up when things get hard." I froze, not from surprise, but from realizing that everything I'd once thought was strength she'd taught me to endure. "You think silence is strength? Then tell me, where was the strength when you saw dried blood on my lip and pretended not to?" The line went dead quiet. I lowered my voice to almost a whisper. "I don't blame you for not protecting me, but I can't keep living just to make you comfortable." A long sigh. Then, for the first time, without a hint of scolding, "Are you sure you're not being influenced by someone?" I slowly sat back down, eyes fixed on the streetlight's glow against the glass. "No one influenced me. It was your silence that made me realize I need to step out." The call ended with a sentence that held no promise: "No matter what, I'm still your mother." I didn't respond. I set the phone down, opened the journal Madison gave me, and wrote, "Today, I no longer need anyone to believe me, to know I'm right. I don't need my mother to understand. I just need to stop waiting for her to." Outside, light snow began to fall. I drew the curtains, poured another cup of tea, and let the warmth settle into my hands. Tonight I accepted the truth: not everyone who gives birth knows how to love their child the right way, and that no longer has the power to define who I am. 3 days after my last call with my mother, I sat in a small coffee shop at the corner of Winford and 6th, with my laptop in front of me and a draft email I had written and deleted for the 11th time. Recipient Delaney.Hart@observerpress.com. Subject: I don't need pity. I need the truth to be seen. Delaney Hart wasn't just some random reporter. She had once blown open a scandal involving a financial network exploiting immigrant women in Seattle, with a long-form investigation that led to 3 businessmen being prosecuted and a charity being dissolved. She didn't write for fun. She wrote to uncover what was hidden. I attached the original materials, photos, bank statements, incident reports, the psychologist's conclusion, internal security camera footage, and the confirmation slip from the police department about Travis's detainment. Finally, there was a voice recording, his voice clear and cold, echoing from the speaker. "No one believes you. I have the reputation. You just have an imagination and an annoying voice." I hit send, then shut the laptop. I didn't check back. I didn't pray. I just sat still, hands wrapped around a cold coffee cup, letting my body understand I was no longer afraid. Delaney called me the next morning. "Riley Hayes. Yes, I want to meet you. Not for an interview. Just to listen fully, without edits, without slapping a victim label on you." We met at her office, 4th floor, in an old building across from the central train station. The room had nothing but a stack of files, a recorder, and a small cactus on the windowsill. Delaney didn't ask bait questions, like, "Does it hurt?" or "Why did you put up with it so long?" She only said, "I'm not going to tell your story for you. I'll bring the truth to light. No more. No less." The conversation lasted over 3 hours. I told her about the first night he smashed my phone because I didn't reply fast enough, to the first time I panicked in the bathroom, locking the door and covering my mouth because I was scared of my own sobs. Delaney never interrupted me once. She only took notes. In the end, she said, "I've written a lot about bad men. But Travis isn't just an abuser. He's a system where silence is trained and fear is legitimized." The article was published in Observer Press's investigative section on Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. Title: "Inside a Bloodless Marriage, but Full of Damage," by Delaney. Heart cover image: a black and white photo of a partially turned arm, with a faint bruise, no face, no name. The piece spread faster than I expected. By 10 a.m., it had been shared over 7,000 times on social media. Some sent messages of thanks. Others claimed I was making it up for attention. But most notably, an email came from an unfamiliar address, c.williams04@inbox.net. Subject: "I was also his almost wife." Her name was Claire Williams, 40 years old, a nurse in Colorado Springs. She sent a text Travis had once sent her in 2014, when he disappeared after 3 months of online dating. "I don't want to deal with anyone weak. You're too much trouble. I need someone who knows her place." Claire said she had spoken out, but mutual friends called her a drama queen, overly heartbroken. No one believed her. After Claire came 2 more women, Julia K. from Ohio, and an anonymous one who signed only as L. Madison and I created a separate email account and sent private invites to all 3. 3 days later, we started a group video call, not to share wounds, but to map the truth. Claire still had copies of the messages Julia had saved, suspicious transfer screenshots from the joint account she shared with Travis and Elle, who had almost married him, had an audio recording of their final argument in which he threatened to silence her voice forever. We didn't cry. No one on that call broke down. We sat upright, each taking turns, each piece falling into place. Madison, the only one who had never been Travis's victim, looked at us through the screen, her eyes bright, like an unwavering light. "You're not alone, and he won't hide in the dark anymore." Delaney's second article came out a week later, titled "One Man, Many Faces, and 3 Women Who Shattered the Silence." When I reached the last sentence, my heartbeat slowed, not from fear, but because for the first time, I saw my story no longer hidden in a password-protected folder, no longer locked in just-in-case recordings. It was alive. Out there. At 10:34 a.m., my lawyer's text came through, just as I was folding sheets in my new apartment on the outskirts of Portland. Just one line: "The extended protective order has been approved. It's now federal." And he was terminated from his company this morning. I froze, staring at the glowing screen like it was a receipt for freedom. No exclamation points. No emojis. But I read the most important part between the words. I was no longer running. That night, I lit a small sandalwood candle on the windowsill, the kind Madison gave me before heading back to Tacoma. She'd said, "Strength isn't being unafraid. It's moving forward even when fear still lingers somewhere." A cool draft slipped through the cracked window. I pulled a light shawl over my shoulders, sat in the wooden chair by the glass, and watched the street. Across the way, the maple had started to change gold flecks brushing against a pale gray sky, like an artist reclaiming their canvas. Travis had lost the job he once bragged was untouchable. After Delaney's second article spread, the board held a closed meeting and announced publicly they will not tolerate any conduct that harms the dignity of others, even in personal matters. For the first time, Travis couldn't control who called, who knew, who sided with him. Every attempt to refute was turned against him by the very evidence he'd once called harmless. I didn't watch his live stream. I didn't need to hear the "she made it up" or "people are misunderstanding me" from a man who once called me a failed investment. I read only one comment under his post from a woman named Jenna W. "You weren't framed. You were recorded." The next week I attended a closed group at Phoenix House, a place where survivors gather so they don't feel like exceptions. I sat beside a woman named Marcy, 52, a former elementary teacher survivor of a 29-year marriage she called a silent contract. Marcy said, "I lost my voice in my own home for nearly 3 decades. Now I'm relearning how to say, I need without asking permission. When it was my turn, I simply said I once thought I'd stay silent forever. But the truth is, I wasn't swallowed. I walked out. No applause. No tears. Just the gaze of people who knew what it felt like to stand between two choices, keep enduring or leave alone. And then to realize once you step, strangers can be the ones waiting to keep you from breaking." I still write in my journal every night, just a few lines. That night I wrote, "This isn't my shame anymore. It's a burden I returned to its rightful owner." A week later, I received a letter from the district attorney's office confirming the investigation into Travis had been expanded federally for financial fraud and violating victim protection orders across multiple states. I didn't celebrate. I didn't pop champagne. I just opened the window, letting the night air sweep away the stifling weight my old house had pressed into my chest for years. Standing there, my hand on the cold wood frame, I whispered, not to anyone, not needing anyone to hear, "I'm not a shadow. I was never a stain. And I'm no longer waiting to be saved." The candle still burned small, its glow catching in the glass, not dazzling, not brilliant, just enough for me to see my own face in the dark. And for the first time, I didn't see someone fragile. I saw Riley, 35 years old survivor, steady and stepping into a life that didn't need hiding, with no room left for the man who once tried to erase her from her own story. Riley's story reminds us that silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's the sign of being suffocated. In real life, many live in relationships where pain is treated as normal. Riley didn't wait for rescue. She chose to document, to stand, and to reclaim her voice. With determination and courage, she proved that truth can be hidden, but never buried forever. And sometimes healing begins with one sentence: "I deserve freedom." What do you think about Riley's journey? If it were you, would you choose silence or stand like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more real, heartfelt stories about family and life.